Well, welcome back, you studly people, for another How to Get More Out of Your Breakup Than Just Heartache. In this module, we're still in Module 1, Closure in the Post-Divorce Process. Today, we're talking about going full circle. This is the lesson we're going to talk about. So, how are you doing today? Hope you're mostly sunny today with few clouds, or at least fewer clouds than yesterday. I have another great lesson for you, and I'm super excited about presenting this chapter to you because it's the lesson where you have a big takeaway. And I think, it's sort of an obvious stage that you go through, but kind of hearing it spoken about, nobody really speaks to this stuff. So I think you'll recognize some of this stuff on your own, but the fact that I'm kind of bringing it up brings a little bit more light to this and validates what you're going through. So kind of qualifying this a little bit, but this is a really good lesson. I think you'll get a lot out of it. And I'm just going to put a precursor out there right now that I have to get a little graphic with this chapter. So if I reveal a little too much information, I'm sorry, but I need to get my point across in some way, and this is the best way I can. So there you go. That's my disclaimer for this chapter, but it's a fun one, so hang in there. And anyway, so here's what we're going to discover in the big picture is when you're going full circle with your ex, there is a beginning, middle, and end. So who would have thought, right? In this lesson, I'll help you identify where you are on this circle and how to get around it. So unless someone like me tells me that, or tells you that you will travel around this circle, you might think you were forever stuck in some of the stages. And that's kind of I was alluding to just a minute ago. So I'm here to tell you, you have to be patient and to point out to you the signs that you are healing. So that's the main, my main goal is for you to recognize the signs of healing as you go around this circle. Because when I was going around this circle, I didn't know if it was good or bad and if I was making any progress. So that's what I want you to find out. So when you go through a divorce, there's all these emotions you go through with your ex, and sometimes you can get stuck in what I call the vortex. You're happy one day and sad the next, then happy again, then sad again, etc. It's like you've been kind of sucked into this swirl and you just want to be spit out and put out of your misery. This is a lesson that once you are spit out will give you a leg up on getting back to happy once and for all. So here's what we're going to talk about. How to identify what stage you are in. We'll talk about the 80-20 rule and 4 tips to help you get around the first half of the circle, which is the hardest half in my opinion. And just so you know, getting around the circle is the precursor step to the ideal divorce. There again, I've said that oxymoron word, ideal divorce. All right, so here's in the beginning stage. So let's jump in. There is truly a beginning, middle, and end. I want to go to this slide and show you, okay? If you were to symbolize divorce with a circle starting at the top and arcing it down to the halfway point, this would be sort of the middle, the beginning to the middle. And I kind of symbolize it here with these little people here going around the circle, right? This would be the middle to the beginning to the middle. At this point, you are halfway there. When you're upside down, you know you're halfway there. So getting around the first half is the hardest part. This is the part where the destructive secrets are revealed, the hatred breeds, and the anger sets in. All this stuff that gets you turned upside down. You can feel a little like the clown going across the high wire, on a unicycle. Remember this guy? Back and forth you go, inching forward, then back, and then forward again. Your little chain squeaks as you go. And the circus music plays in the background. This back and forth thing again. So the expression, you never really know someone until you go through a divorce, is a very true statement. How many have heard that, right? Now is when you really get to know each other just a little bit better. And I call this the, excuse me, 80-20 rule in divorce. When you are married to each other, you really only reveal 80% of yourself. In divorce, you meet the other 20%. See how nice they are in marriage, and then after divorce, after marriage, they turn into this one-eyed cyclops. Well, in marriage, you really only tap into your 5 senses. In divorce, you develop your 6th sense, the other 20% of who you are. You will know each other so well that you will be able to predict each other's next move. You won't have to communicate because the psychic energy between the two of you will take care of this. You will get a feeling about something, and usually you will be right. For instance, if you were a guy, it might happen like this. The new bubbly girlfriend giggles when she asks, "So then, she agreed to let you keep the Corvette? Wow, that was really nice of your ex." That's when you realize you were driving the Corvette, and in a flash, you get a funny feeling that something's not right, and you just know, and then it comes to you. You have no brakes. So you test them, and lo and behold, you're right. That's what I'm talking about. Developing your 6th sense. The beginning of a divorce feels overwhelming, and you go through a period of pure shock. So you like this little cartoon? The bimbo's going over the cliff, and so is he. He has no brakes. Anyway, there's something about this slide that radiates with all of us. Am I right? Divorce makes us a little paranoid at times, don't you think? The truth can be shocking. In my case, the truth was another woman. And like many who have been betrayed before my marriage even ended, I was developing my 6th sense. I knew something wasn't right, and you know what I'm talking about if you've ever been deceived or on the brink of divorce. It's kind of like that psychic vibe that you get. You just know. Usually you get this feeling about the time something happens. It's the time when the phone rings and you think, who would be calling him now? Or, whose email address is this? I had a premonition. It was about maybe 2 years before, or about a year, I guess, before things started happening. I had a premonition about another woman. And my husband, maybe cheating on me. And it was sort of a dream. I dreamt he was seeing a tall, skinny blonde and had moved into his own apartment. And I woke up just really, really startled by that dream. And because we were on solid ground, I mean, there was nothing changing, and everything was good. Yet it seemed so real. So I told him about it, and he reassured me everything was fine. That would never happen. And I just thought, silly dream, dismissed it, and all that. It was bizarre and all this stuff. So about a year later, he met her, the woman, and 10 months later, something started developing between them. Suddenly, he became distant to me, and I didn't understand his attitude or his shortness with me. And I think if you've ever been kind of in that position where the spouse isn't being faithful, once it happens to you once, you are like white on rice with it. You can spot it a mile away when it's happening to other people, So I was in the beginning, I was starting to see a cockiness to him, and you can imagine my shock when I learned he was not only seeing someone, but he was seeing someone where we both worked. And I think that was kind of that was even harder than the other part of it. I mean, it was hard, period. But amazingly, she was tall and skinny and a blonde, just like the woman in my dream from 2 years before. True to my dream, he had moved out and got his own apartment. I mean, just the word bizarre comes to my mind whenever I recall that dream. It was a crazy time, and I would go so far as to say it was traumatic. Yeah. So they say people lose their memory when they've gone through something traumatic. So in the initial stage, you will suffer from acute memory loss. Nothing sticks, sort of like that Teflon pan, where the egg slides right off. That was my memory. I believe it's because you're in shock and you still have to function with everyday life. You can't help but be preoccupied with your own thoughts during this time. You are very, what I call, self-absorbed and overwhelmed with emotion. It's like someone has zapped all your memory cells out of your brain and used them in a Keanu Reeves film for feeding the Matrix, right? You know what I'm talking about. Great film, by the way. So, like, I'm so profound. I mean, everybody knows that. So it is traumatic when our marriage ends. Medical studies have shown that when we are traumatized emotionally, we can block things from our memory. Blocking a traumatic experience from your memory is a psychological protection mechanism. Being forgetful because your mind is so overwhelmed with emotional chaos is another. There's a fine line between the two, and the subject is highly debated, but I'm not going to get into that with you today. I'm just not sure which it was in my case, but I was traumatized that my husband would treat me the way he was, and I was forgetful because I was overwhelmed emotionally. And maybe you experienced that as well. So the beginning stage is where this seems to happen. And my advice, first tip is to keep a journal so that it helps you, remember things and you don't forget so much. So keeping a journal is extremely beneficial during this time. It will jog your memory and help you keep facts straight. Not only that, but it is a good way to pour out your emotions. My mother tried to help me make my life easier during this difficult period. And she hired a gardener for me, which was awesome. So I wouldn't have to do my own yard work, and I could just focus on taking care of my small children. It was awesome. Then one day things were really bad, and she made arrangements for my carpets to be cleaned. She knew it would make me happy. And really, who doesn't like a clean carpet, right? But to this day, I don't remember having them cleaned. It happened because my sister was there with me, and she swears that they were cleaned. I just have no recollection of it. I don't know where I was, but I was on another channel somewhere. I simply was not present mentally. This was a clear reminder to me that I was still under a lot of stress, and the shock of my marriage ending had yet to completely set in. At the beginning of a divorce, it feels overwhelming. I think you go through a period of just pure shock. I know this to be the case of my ex too, because during this stage, he had confided in my sister how he was having trouble remembering things too. Now, even though his situation was a little bit different and his circumstances were different, he was still overwhelmed emotionally too. So I think it happens to both of us. So another tip I have for you is communicate with each other as little as possible during this beginning stage. At the beginning stage of your divorce, decisions have to be made. This is when you have to treat your divorce like a business. It's a partnership you are trying to dissolve. In business and in divorce, when someone doesn't comply with a request and or their input is needed, there are many ways to seek a response. If you can't get a response from them verbally or in writing, then you go to a third party. And if you still get nowhere, you have to make assumptions on how they would respond. Put the request in writing and inform them that in the absence of the reply, here is what we are assuming. Date stamp the sucker and send it certified mail with receipt of delivery. Chances are you will get a response. So you have to treat it like a business. So during this time, it's best if we have as little communication and contact as possible with each other. It's an anger-rich environment, and contact just adds to the stress. Our tolerance of their crap right now is off the chart, right? Somewhere around -40. Crap meters are calibrated and loaded, ready to go. And if you haven't read my book, I have a whole chapter on the crap meter, and it's a good one. It's fun. But with each ringing of the telephone, that panic feeling surfaces, and our heart pumps faster. What if there is more bad news? What if he or she is cold to me again? Why is my spouse throwing it all away? Will this be the time I can convince them to change and come home? Do I want them to come home? So those are the kind of questions that just the ringing of the phone brings up, and it can make you a neurotic mess. How long is a little while to wait to communicate, Tommy? Well, it depends on if you have kids or not, right? If you don't have kids at all, then after all the property is divided, you won't ever have to deal with this person ever again, and that's the good news. But if you do have children together, oh, the fun you will have. And sorry, not to be a downer, but that's just the way it is. deep breath. Okay, there is no hiding out. You'll have to communicate sooner or later, and it's usually sooner than later. In addition to property matters, you'll have to talk about schedules, money, schools, and possibly illnesses with the children. So why put yourself through this? Let the phone go to voicemail if it makes you uncomfortable. Okay? Nobody says you have to answer the phone and talk to them right away. There is no moral code that says we have to answer the phone when our estranged spouse calls. If it makes you uncomfortable, then let the phone go to voicemail or send emails or text messages, and for goodness sake, change the voicemail message. The first step to closure is as simple as changing your outgoing voicemail message if you share a home voicemail message. So, I mean, that's not so much the case anymore. People have their own cell phones and their own voicemail. But I just remember when I was going through my divorce, a friend of mine still had her husband's voice on the house phone voice message. And I thought to myself, man, you need to change that. It had been like months. And anyway, it was just kind of a telling sign that she hadn't really completely accepted the situation. So then my next tip is this one. Attach notes to the kids' backpack if necessary to convey any messages that you need to when the spouse comes to get the kids, the ex-spouse. So when you have to send the kids off to the ex, have their backpacks ready to go with with everything they'll need, and set it outside your front door. You don't have to, no personal appearances are necessary. You don't have to show your face. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can attach notes to the backpack if necessary. I mean, you've got to take care of you. If you're not ready to face your ex, nothing is written in stone that says you have to. But there are things you do have to communicate about, and you can put things in writing. So when you see your ex pull up and the doorbell rings, kiss the children and send them out and have them wait on this doorstep. When you see them arrive back home, unlock the door and then hang out in another room. For some people, it isn't possible. And if you need to, put a note on the door, kids, come on in. For some people, this isn't possible. The potential for violence is too great. So, and I realize that. So when this is the case, the courts can work out an arrangement for you. But I'm talking about what to do until then. There's lots of people meet in public parking lots like McDonald's or something like that. So there's people around. So when the potential for violence is too great and you feel at risk, have a third party there to send the kids off and to receive them for you, even if you have to pay someone. So maybe you should go somewhere else too while the third party's there. So pay a sitter if you must, or have a friend or relative help you until things simmer down. That's a valuable service, and one I would have gladly paid money for, at least temporarily. But there was no service out there. So if somebody's looking for a quick job or a little extra money, that's a good service. You might market that one. Sometimes just meeting in a public place, though, too, makes people less free to vocalize feelings. All right, so moving on to the middle. Okay. Oh, and one last thing I want to say about in the beginning stage, you will have a lot of days where you have high highs and low days. All right. So some will be really high highs and some will be really low lows. The time between them will seem like canyons, but don't despair. It does get better. Really, it does. And as you move through and navigate around this circle, those really high days and really low days, the gap between them shortens. So something can set you in a funk for a 2-week span, maybe in the beginning, but in the middle, that same thing might only set you for a funk for maybe a day or two. It's pretty cool. In the middle, this is where we are. Most things in life can be solved or explained through mathematics, right? Almost everything except what? Emotions. It's hard to say how long it takes to get to the halfway point in your divorce circle. You may feel like you will end up in a halfway house really long before you get to the halfway point, but don't despair. So when you know you would never go back, no matter what, that's when you know you've reached the halfway point. So if this is where you are, you can rejoice in knowing that you are halfway to indifference. At this stage, you may still love your ex, but you know in your heart you wouldn't and couldn't ever go back. So celebrate. If I had that song Celebration, by Cool in the Gang or whatever, I'd play it, but I don't, and it's kind of been overplayed. So celebrate for just a minute. You've arrived at that point of no return, the middle, when you've reached this point. So it's a monumental revelation when you realize it for the first time. It means you can free yourself and look elsewhere for love and happiness. But here's the thing. You may wobble and falter with self-doubt on occasion, but trust me, you will have an epiphany about your ex that will set you straight once and for all. And so here's the graphic part that I was telling you about. Might be a little TMI, but I remember waking up countless nights knowing something was wrong, something didn't feel right. Then, like a smack in the face, I'd remember, oh, he's with her, and we're getting divorced. There is nothing like this rude awakening in the middle of the night. I was crying alone, thinking he's getting it on with her, probably doing her right now. And if they had had sex half as often as I thought they were, they'd be in the Guinness Book of Records, right? So I was being goofy. I couldn't understand how they could do this to me. Truth of the matter is, neither one of them were ever thinking about me. When I realized that was kind of an eye-opener too. And once I realized that they weren't thinking about me, I got mad. And finally things began to change. My epiphany came in the form of a dream. And epiphanies come in all different ways. Mine just happened to be in the form of a dream. And if you can meditate long enough to have an epiphany about your ex and get there, oh, the freedom it brings. But here was mine. So some time had passed, and I was getting used to calling him by his new nickname, which was Dickhead. And sorry, I'm well over this. By the way, I'm just doing this for dramatic effect for your benefit. So that's my qualifier. At this point in my life, I was feeling better about myself too. I had lost a few pounds and was exercising regularly. Incidentally, my motivation to exercise probably wasn't what it should have been, but nonetheless, I was getting fit and looking good. I think I was working out because I wanted to kick somebody's butt. That's why. And I don't think I know that's why I was working out. But it worked, and I was in pretty good shape. And anyway, I'm not a violent person. And let me just cover an important point. When I first started working out, like I said, it wasn't for my health. No, not at all. But I already covered that. Let's see where okay. So there's a difference between knowing what you are doing versus knowing why you are doing it. So my point is, when you know your why for doing what you do, it makes your focus and purpose crystal clear. So I knew my why for working out, and it worked for me. Again, I wanted to kick some butt. I'm not saying what worked for me will work for you, but I am saying when you are motivated by your why, you will see better results. It just helps your focus, that's all. So back to my story. One night I dreamt I was seducing my ex and he wanted me back. Yeah, in the midst of all this craziness, I was having these kind of off-the-chart dreams. I was dancing around him in my dream, and he was getting an erection of mammoth proportion. It was getting so big that it was starting to get uncomfortable for him, and he yelled out my name and pleaded with me, Tommy, stop. And I continued with my dance, and like a balloon, blowing up larger and larger until there was nothing left to stretch. Guess what? It exploded. So, poof, it disappeared. And it was a defining moment in my dream. I woke up not feeling empty or jealous anymore. The fact that the penis had exploded kind of took all of that away from me. And it was kind of I don't know, maybe it was a Freudian thing or something. I need a dream analyst. But the fact that it exploded, and after that, I had absolutely no more desire for him ever again. And it was just that one dream, and it was crazy. I don't understand it exactly, but you don't have to. If epiphanies don't always make sense. And I didn't mean this was this was sort of a pretty wacky, far out there dream, but it got me there, and I never had to go back. So whatever, as long as it gets you where you need to go, right? When you are in the middle, you may have feelings of anger, sorrow, and regret, but you know you are moving on and you feel good about it. When I was at this point, I think I felt more sorry for my ex than anything. I was moving on, and I could see that he was just coming to terms with everything. I knew he was far from where I needed him to be for us to ever reunite, and I had worked out my own resolve about it. We did not pass through this stage together. So you may find that you still have heated disagreements during the stage, and it may be because you are not in the same stage together. When you are in the middle, your anger from these spats dissipates faster. Instead of getting rushes of adrenaline every time you have to see each other, you may actually wonder how they are doing instead. You may feel your comfort level around your ex change back to normal. It felt good. Actually, I felt pretty good about having my life back and being in control of where my life was headed at this point. It was like I was 23 again when really I was 33. But now I was wiser. I knew myself better now, and I was more worldly, I guess you could say, and I had more confidence in myself. So you will reach a point where you say to yourself, I am single and I've got it going on. Or I'm a single parent and I've got it going on. One of those two. So at the end, as you, when you're at this stage, you'll continue to make your way around the circle. And you're starting to feel stronger. Do you remember at the beginning of this module, I asked will you have some? I told you you'd have some really low lows and some really high highs, and that the days in between will be canyons. Well, at this stage, the days in between get shorter. They are not so gaping wide, and they are fewer between. What your ex does or says doesn't affect you as long, if at all, anymore. This is where you start to feel your inner peace coming back. And it's a great feeling. Not only have you freed yourself to look elsewhere for love, but you have freed them as well. So continue your circle and completely draw it from the bottom, right? And make your little self around and all the way until you go up to the top. So this is when you've gone full circle. You will know you've gone full circle when you don't even think twice about being kind to your ex or to each other. That's when you know you've gone full circle. One time, my ex was late in picking up my son, and by the time he arrived, he was drunk. So he'd been drinking on a very, very hot day, and I mean, it just kind of, I don't even know how he got behind the wheel and could make it over, but he found his way to the house. He should not have been driving. And he'd driven a good distance and was obviously past the legal alcohol limit. Instead of being angry, I was truly concerned for his safety and for, other people on the road too. So I offered to drive him home, and when he declined, then I insisted he come inside and rest it off for a while. So when he was able to drive, I told him to come back for our son in the morning, and he agreed. So we didn't argue about it, and that was pretty mind-blowing. Afterward, I knew he had really gone full circle to be able to do this. And for me to offer him a ride home or to come inside, for him to accept, and for us to not fight about any of this was really nice. It was what it was. This never would have happened. We never would have been able to do this before this stage in our divorce. So I probably would have called the police and he probably would have guilted my son into going with him. I mean, that's just kind of how it probably would have gone down, but it didn't. Divorces are rarely friendly or amicable, at least in the beginning. In fact, on the whole, they are pretty nasty. Anyone who tells you otherwise is probably clueless in the marriage too, because in the beginning stages, you just are full of venom. And not to say that it won't happen. I'm just saying in these early stages. So I never wanted to see my ex again, but because we had 2 children together, we had to deal with each other. When it is forced upon you and you have to work things out one way or another, eventually both parties will succumb to the energy it takes to stay hateful. After a long period of animosity toward each other, one of you will start to bend and show kindness or even sympathy. That's when things miraculously will change. You will be humbled by the power in forgiveness. You will eventually get to indifference, and when you do, you will be surprised how one act of kindness will lead to another, and then another. I remember very distinctly when this turned around for us. My ex had retrieved a dog from the pound. It was a breed that I wasn't comfortable having around my kids, and we argued and the conversation ended with me hanging up on him. So, he waited a few minutes and called me back, and when I answered, he calmly asked if it would help if I met the dog and saw for myself that it was a mild-mannered dog. Although I didn't think it would solve anything, I agreed I would, and asked if he would keep it away from the children until he got to know the animal's temperament. So after trying to work out a compromise, things began to change for us. We were taking baby steps, but we started relating to each other more civilly. It was definitely a turning point. All right, so here we are. We've reached pretty much the end, and I have my From the Toolbox, some little tools for you. So the process of morphing your relationship from marriage to divorce requires conflict resolution skills. The irony is you don't have these skills perfected in marriage, and divorce will be no different. So there is the School of Hard Knocks, and it has a motto: you are never too old to learn new tricks, right? The divorce degree program has no prerequisite class. Divorce is the crash course on conflict resolution. Going full circle is the precursor step to having an ideal divorce. It takes a lot of time to go around this circle. You may not pass through any of the stages together with your ex, but once you have made this journey all the way around, you will find a complete change in yourself. All right, see you in the next video, and have a great day.